have an Intel Pentium 4 processor, it's just a gray box.
The creator of the first microprocessor, the biggest chip manufacturer in history, the engine behind Silicon Valley's rise. In recent days, Qualcomm offered to buy Intel, from Apple abandoning their chips to huge job cuts. Just 5 years ago, NVIDIA was only worth about half of Intel's valuation. But today, you can subtract Intel's entire valuation from NVIDIA's, and NVIDIA would still be worth over $2 trillion. Over the last few months, I wanted to find the pieces of the puzzle, a puzzle that reveals where Intel went wrong. But what I uncovered is a series of missteps that led to their downfall. Intel was the creator that revolutionized microprocessors in the field of computer systems. Intel manufactured chips were used in almost everything. It had become the most important technology manufactured in the United States. Silicon Valley got its name signifying the success of Intel. It got known to be the future of Silicon Valley and future of computing. The stories faded away years ago with Intel falling between the cracks. Intel reported its biggest loss of $7 billion in 2023 due to an overheating issue that got picked up and spread quickly. By 2024, everyone was reporting Intel CPU stability issues. Intel reportedly had its worst day since 1974, when the stock prices fell 27%.
I am tired talking about the Intel CPU instability issues.
No fix for Intel's crashing 13th and 14th general CPUs.
Okay, so they shipped out a faulty product. The next logical step would obviously just be a recall. But guess what? Intel just confirmed that they are not doing a recall. So if you have one of these Intel CPUs, honestly, you're probably just screwed at this point.
Things were so bad for Intel that even Qualcomm, who was known for its innovations in wireless technology, offered to buy Intel. If this were to happen, it would be the biggest deal in the history, given that Intel was going through an operating loss of $2 billion. If you look back, nearly every personal computer had an Intel Inside logo, symbolizing the strong partnership between Microsoft and Intel, which dominated the tech industry. Intel's co-founder, Gordon Moore, followed a simple but powerful principle, Moore's Law. The law predicted that the number of transistors on a chip would double every 2 years, driving exponential performance improvements. Intel followed this mantra throughout their success over the years, but it wasn't possible to do that with large transistor sizes. To keep up, Intel had to shrink transistor sizes, allowing for more computing power without increasing chip size. This innovation kept them ahead of the competition, consistently delivering faster and more efficient processors. Until the mid-2010, Intel had a market share of 79%, which meant almost 80% of all personal computers had Intel chips inside. On the other hand, AMD, one of its major competitor, was far behind with only 20% of the market share. The question was, what could possibly go wrong? Microsoft and Intel revenue was soaring until a serious change came into the market, which put brakes on their exponential growth. It all started on the 29th of June 2007, when Apple launched the iconic iPhone into the world, marking the start of a new era dominated by smartphones. Before iPhone launch, people depended on personal computers for their day-to-day tasks, whether it was home, school, or offices. Smartphones took the market by storm. Compared to personal computers, smartphones were portable, user-friendly, and very easy to use. Many of the everyday tasks that users previously needed a personal computer for, like browsing internet, checking emails, or editing a document, was now all possible through the smartphone, a device that fits in the palm of their hands. Personal computer processors at that time, known as x86, were meant to have high performance and could do intensive tasks using complex computing, whereas the smartphones did not really need to have high performance or do intensive tasks. It only needed to do simple things utilizing less power, and that's when ARM processors were born. ARM processors became a standard for all smartphones. It was a completely different league, getting into the chips for smartphones, and this is where Intel missed the ship. They underestimated the market for smartphones, and since designing a completely different architecture of chips needed more resources and investment, They decided to back out of mobile market and continue their focus of x86 chips. While Intel continued their pursuit of improving x86 chips, the smartphone market was exploding. Smartphones became an everyday thing for every user, and millions of people started to adopt them for their convenience and ease of use. New players were born who took over the ARM processor market like Qualcomm, TSMC, and Samsung, who started dominating the ARM processor market. Qualcomm produced Snapdragon, which became the standard for Android smartphones, while TSMC and Samsung started massively supplying ARM chips. Intel wasn't completely out of the game. In 2008, they released their Atom processor, which was their own design built for smartphones. Intel supplied these Atom processors to a few smartphone companies, like Asus and Nokia, but there was no mainstream adoption, and these devices did not do well in the market. Based on the market reports, the Atom processor could not match the battery efficiency of ARM chips and lost that race. While all this was happening, a company was working on something completely opposite of ARM chips. They were not focused on the power efficiency, but instead more hungry for performance. That company was none other than NVIDIA. Initially founded in 1993, their core focus was graphics processing unit, GPU. Unlike CPU, GPU specializes in only one thing: handling complex graphics and creating better visuals. GPU adds much higher details to graphics, making it ideal for more advanced users, like gamers and content creators, who rely on heavy graphics for their daily tasks. There wasn't a big market for GPU at the time, as it was very focused only on a fraction of users. For most of the average users, Intel integrated graphics card was enough for basic tasks and even some less intensive games. Intel's strategy was simple. Why invest time and resources on a market that was only a fraction of users, especially when their main source of income was already high from the CPU chips? NVIDIA slowly grew in their space and built a niche market for themselves. They were known to have the best GPU and became the talk of the town in every corner. Users who bought these expensive GPU cards were quick to boast about it and were blown away by their performance. NVIDIA became a popular brand name and their revenue started going up. Intel didn't realize how much this niche market would cost them down the road. Having mastered the market for video games, NVIDIA realized that these GPU cards were not just great for gamers, there was an even bigger market for it. In 2010, NVIDIA's GPU got right in the center of the crypto mining. Miners discovered that GPU were far more efficient in mining cryptocurrencies. NVIDIA GPU cards became popular among miners, while the users who were not yet in the crypto mining started to buy GPU to get on the crypto mining. The major shortage began in 2017 with the rise of cryptocurrencies. There was a huge demand for GPU, but not many in the market. In 2020, the pandemic combined with a crypto boom led to a severe GPU shortage. Between 2020 to 2021, NVIDIA sold their GPU on 2 or 3 times their market rates due to the shortage. During all this, another big technology was cooking: artificial intelligence, AI. AI required insane amount of computing tasks, like training deep learning models. Whether it was image recognition, identifying objects for self-driving cars, or having a chat bot come up with a response in real time. In 2006, NVIDIA introduced CUDA processors, which enabled the developers use NVIDIA GPUs for AI, deep learning, and scientific computing. They further solidified their brand by launching the world's first AI supercomputer designed for deep learning. This move made them the undisputed leader in AI hardware. NVIDIA took advantage of their market position and started building data center GPU that could now be used for massive deep learning and AI analysis. Their fast processing of complex data, combined with heavy workload handling, got them right in the spot. By 2023, a major explosion in the world of AI made NVIDIA to be the only player who had the capability of delivering the solution to all the AI challenges. Meanwhile, Intel was still playing catch-up to everything they had missed over the years. They eventually realized the importance of GPU, but it was too late by then. NVIDIA had already taken over 88% of the GPU market. NVIDIA's revenue soared to new heights in 2023, thanks to the AI and crypto market boom. Intel had lost that battle and didn't have the capacity to be anywhere close to NVIDIA in the GPU space. Intel would still not be in the place it is today had they continued to maintain their core business. But that was also where new challenges started coming up. No one could beat Intel in the chip for personal computer business. They had dominated the market for several years. AMD was the only competitor and was always considered inferior compared to Intel. AMD was bought by the average budget buyer who could not afford to buy Intel processor. In 2017, AMD completely shook the industry with the introduction of Ryzen processors. Ryzen was a complete redesign to what AMD had done before. It was known to be the Zen architecture. This architecture replaced one huge chip design and broke it down into 3 smaller chips inside, which directly resulted in up to 16 CPU cores and more scalable performance. With this design, AMD was able to deliver high-end CPU at a price cheaper than Intel. By 2020, it was found that AMD Ryzen was not just catching up to Intel's performance, but in fact, in few cases, beating them. The narrative changed. AMD was no longer the cheaper alternative. It was the same or better performer at a cheaper price. The narrative was adopted by many users who were already tired of ongoing Intel processor issues. Intel and AMD revenue gap was now reducing. When initially in 2019, AMD was just 10% of Intel's revenue. By 2023, they had come close to 40%, which no one could have ever imagined. But it wasn't just redesign that led them to close this gap. It was the way they started manufacturing the processors. All processors needed semiconductors, and from the early days, Intel did this in-house. While it sounded great for business, but required huge factories for creating them. Only once semiconductors were ready, another task of then creating processors from them would take place. The smart thing that AMD did was it gave all the semiconductor manufacturing as a contract to companies like TSMC and Samsung, who were only focused in creating semiconductors. This meant that AMD just had to focus on one task, building better quality processors, without having the stress of managing huge factories. They were not able to just create better quality processors, but at a much faster speed because all their resources were just engaged on manufacturing processors. After losing the GPU market and having a mass impact of AMD getting closer, the final setback came with the end of collaboration with Apple. In 2020, Apple made a strategic decision to produce their own chips for Macs, known as the Apple Silicon. This marked the end of a 15-year-old partnership, which was a heavy blow. The Intel stocks fell by more than 8%. The market reports suggest that Apple was fed up of Intel's ongoing chip issues. They were resulting in problems and limiting performance of the Macs. If this was not enough, Intel was also missing on delivery deadlines. That further delayed delivery dates for the Macs, resulting in declining Mac sales. Manufacturing delays, missed deadlines, and failure to deliver performance led Apple to take matter in their own hands. Apple launched M1 chips, which allowed them to have better control on both software and hardware of the Macs, leading to a much higher performance. Intel's business from Apple was only 8%, so did not really count much in the revenue. But the damage was ultimately to Intel's reputation. It was no longer the untouchable, undisputed leader in personal computers. If that wasn't enough, the Apple-manufactured M1 chips based on ARM processors was beginning to show a higher performance compared to Intel's x86. Intel did not just lose Apple as a customer, but saw another competitor rise who could now beat Intel processors. What do you think was the worst mistake out of those we pointed out? That had the biggest impact for Intel. The whole story just shows how an unbeatable giant lost billions of dollars because they did not adapt. It's a reminder that the world is changing faster than we can imagine, and nothing is set in stone. Any major player could easily be wiped out if they do not adapt to the market needs. We hope Intel takes learning from these setbacks and is able to make a comeback soon. If you liked the video, please subscribe to support us in continuing to deliver great and informative content. Thanks for watching.